Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the Bundesliga show brought to you by Over the Bar. We are back today, this morning, for our Match Week 3 preview for all you budding Bundesliga fantasy football players, joined by Rune as per usual. Rune, how are you doing this morning?
Very good, thanks. I'm ready for a busy deadline and fantasy Bundesliga day.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think the key transfer is to look out for today? There's obviously lots of rumours circulating with Bayern and possibly deals with Dortmund as well. But there's also the big one with Union Berlin as well, and a certain Italian stallion.
Yeah, a few interesting deals to look out for, I think, especially the Bayern ones. They need or they want to bring in two players. It looks like a number 6 and a defender as well. So some interesting things going on there. And yeah, then of course a big one was concluded last night with Niklas Füllkrug moving to Dortmund. Interesting to see how that will go as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, thank you to everyone that's joining us live. We appreciate that we've had to move things around with our schedule, and it's really because we're desperate to keep the show going all season long. And so Friday morning, generally speaking, is going to be our new live slot. So please do join us live where you can do. And then if not, we've had loads of questions asked pre the show. So we'll get to those as well, and we'll get to the live ones as well. I can see a few have already come in from Captain Rex, a regular of ours. So without further delay, let's crack on. So defenders, as per usual, we shall start with, and we'll go with your budget pick to begin with, Rune, and I shall bring those up on screen as well.
Yes, my budget pick this week is Ndene from Mainz, who is back after a few seasons at PSV in the Netherlands, and he started as a wingback against Eintracht last week, and I think he looked pretty impressive, and he also picked up 9 points, which is quite good considering the result. And I think he looks like one of the better budget options at the back, also because I think Mainz have a pretty good schedule. They have Werder this time, then they have Stuttgart, and they have Augsburg, if I remember correctly. So that's pretty solid. I think he's one of the better cheap options there. And then my mid-price pick this week is Grimaldo from Leverkusen, another new signing. And I was actually at Borussia Park last week to see Leverkusen play against Gladbach, and I think Grimaldo was very involved down the left-hand side there. Of course, Frimpong is an obvious pick this week on the right side, but I also think Grimaldo is a great option, either if you can't afford Frimpong or if you want to double up in defense. That's also viable, I think, with Leverkusen playing against Darmstadt at home. They looked very impressive against Gladbach, and could be in for another big win, I think. And then finally, my premium pick this week is Bensebaini, and of course I could have chosen Davies or Frimpong instead, but I just wanted to mention Bensebaini this week because of Dortmund's matchup against Heidenheim at home, which is also very attractive to invest in. I know Dortmund haven't been that impressive so far. They've been quite poor, actually, I think. Really disappointing. But it's a really good matchups, and Bensebaini's ownership is lower, so might be definitely worth keeping him, but also a possible investment this week. And he has scored 18 points in his first 2 games, which is okay. I think a bit disappointing, but still okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, some good points there. And I'm sure there's going to be lots of questions possibly about doubling up on Leverkusen and Dortmund assets this weekend. So yeah, we'll tackle those as and when they come in. So we'll just get through, as per usual, now that we've gone through the defenders. We'll see if there are any defender questions. I'll flick through my phone as well for the ones that were were asked pre the show going live. Captain Rex, we'll come to yours first then, and that is Weiser or Bensebaini this match day. Hopefully, Rune, we've covered that one, and you think that Bensebaini would be well worth the investment over Weiser, particularly with Werder's form, potentially the loss of someone for Weiser to cross into in the box as well.
Yeah, good point, Rory. I think Benzebaini is a much more safe pick, especially with Fulkrug leaving and everything, and Werder's poor form, as you mentioned.
Yeah, absolutely. Morning, Jeff. Thanks very much for making it this morning. Can see that in the chat. And so I'll just quickly spin through my questions. This might be one that is of interest. Rune, so from Mike Macaulay asked on Twitter, does Roggiero any interest to you? Thought he was a notable signing and has completed his suspension. Obviously, referring to the Wolfsburg, left back / left winger. I think I replied to Mike on Twitter just saying it possibly depends on how Kovac is maybe going to look to use him, and maybe depends on whether Baku stays put as well. Obviously, they've got Mailer as well. What are your thoughts on Roggiero and the signing in general?
I think he's one to keep an eye on. At the moment, I think Mele is the only fullback for Wolfsburg who I would say is nailed down to start. I think Roggiero could start this week, but as you said, Rory, it probably also depends on Baku, and there's a lot of competition for places there. And also after a pretty good schedule from the start of the season, then Wolfsburg's fixtures are getting tougher now. They have Hoffenheim this week, which is a pretty good fixture, but then they have Union and Dortmund and Frankfurt afterwards. So three pretty difficult ones coming up. But definitely, I think from what I've heard and what I've read about him, he seems like a quite good fantasy asset, and I think he's a player to have on your radar to see when the season progresses. If he can nail down that spot at left back for Wolfsburg, then he's a pretty good option, I think.
Absolutely. One from another regular of ours that was asked before the show, FPL Gunnosaurus. I think he's asked two questions, but one of them is in relation to defenders. Between Alphonso Davies and Frimpong, who is the best star for this match day? I guess you probably, leaning towards Leverkusen, I guess myself, Frimpong, because Davies has started the season so well, but you always kind of feel that Gladbach hoodoo, even this, the way the Gladbach have been playing so far this season with Bayern, it kind of makes you err on the side of caution.
Yeah, I think it's one of the weeks where it actually makes sense to consider starring an alternative to Davies. I checked out some scoring odds last night. Fantasy Tipsters posted some on Twitter. They always do that, so really helpful resource for fantasy news as well. And I noticed that they mentioned that they've never seen the probability of a defender scoring being so big before, as with Frimpong this week. I think it was around 30% chance of scoring. So wow. That's a quite high percentage. But then again, Davies has been really amazing from the start of the season too. Frimpong probably has a bigger chance of scoring, but Davies is just so involved for Bayern. So I think it's a difficult one. If you want to differentiate yourself from your competitors, I think Frimpong is probably the way to go. But I think a lot of people will be sticking with Davies too. So it's tough.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's all the defender questions that we had. Apologies if I've missed anything when we can come back to that. So we'll just move on to Rune's midfielder picks, which are now going below screen once it updates. It has done. Yeah, brilliant. Off you go, Rune, with your budget pick. And Samuel Boggs saying Weghorst to be top goal scorer or point scorer. You heard it here first, fellas. So there we go. Watching out for Samuel's pick of Weghorst to be the point scorer of the week.
And in midfield, my budget pick is Ruben Vargas and from Augsburg, and I think Augsburg is a team to target if you want some cheaper option this week. I think their matchup is very attractive against Bochum at home, and Vargas got on the score sheet in the opener against Gladbach. Of course, they really difficult game against Bayern last week. So didn't really expect him to do that well there, and he didn't. But this time it will be a much easier game, at least on paper. Bochum lost to 5-0 to Stuttgart in their opener away from home. So we have seen before that investing in a team like Augsburg or Stuttgart that are not as expensive might work out some weeks. So if you need that enabler, then Vargas could be a good option. Vexpikai, who is a bit cheaper, has also looked very lively, I think, in midfield for Augsburg.
Yes.
So another option there. And then my mid-price pick is Felix Mecha. He may not start, but we will see if he does on Friday night tonight. So I think if he starts, he's not that expensive considering the role he plays in Dortmund's midfield as a number 8. Gets forward a lot and could be an good alternative to Julian Brandt in midfield for Dortmund if you want someone else. And then finally, my premium pick is Jonas Hoffmann, who has seems to enjoy himself at Leverkusen, has fit in really well, I think, after his move from Gladbach, and has scored double digits in both match days so far, including last week's game against his former club. And I think he works really well with Florian Wirtz just behind Boniface up front. So pretty much like with Grimaldo at the back, you can also double up with Hoffmann and Wirtz in midfield, or you could go with Hoffmann instead of Wirtz if you want someone else. His ownership is not that high, actually. It's 15% now, I can see. So not that high considering his potential.
Yeah, that's a strange one. Only 15%. I would assume that was a lot higher.
I think it's because of Wirtz that many people went with Wirtz and thought, hey, I only want to pick one Leverkusen midfielder. And also, of course, it's worth considering that Leverkusen face Bayern next week. So,
sure.
Just keep that in mind before transferring in too many Leverkusen players. Consider whether you want them next week as well. I think some of the assets from Leverkusen could be kept next week, like Hoffmann or Wirtz or Frimpong. But I mean, you might not want Grimaldo, for example, next week. So that's definitely a thing to consider too.
Yeah, absolutely. Some good picks in there for you all to rummage through. So questions I'll come to as well from the live chat, and indeed ones that were asked before the show went live. One from George in the chat here. How do you feel about Olmo against Union Berlin this weekend, Rune?
I feel Olmo is quite fixture proof in general. He also did well against Leverkusen in the opener, despite that being a difficult one too. But obviously, Union Berlin away from home is a difficult one. So I think with 5 transfers, it makes sense to consider at least whether to move him out this week for someone who has a better fixture, especially because both Leverkusen and Dortmund have so good games, attractive games at home against some of the teams at the bottom. So personally, I'm considering moving him out for Brandt or Hoffmann, for example, and getting a player with a more manageable fixture. But I would also feel okay about keeping him, as I said, because he's a player who can do well against any team. He scored a hat-trick against Bayern in the Super Cup, so that says it all.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, he'll have a big impact on anything that Leipzig do at the top end of the pitch. That's for sure. Captain Rex in the chat saying, still can't believe Hoffmann went for just 5 mil. Now Gladbach are struggling to afford to loan Jordan Sebastiu from Union Berlin.
I think it was 10 million actually, but still a very good price.
Yeah, it was a very good price. And then just a quick one from Captain Rex, just as a general, do we have an update on whether there will be unlimited transfers this season? I presume that's in relation to when we hit international breaks, which obviously we're closely coming up on as well. Have you got any information for us all, Rune, in that sense? I'm guessing you're probably in the dark like many others.
Yeah, no. I don't have an update, unfortunately. I wouldn't count on it. I think the other years it was announced weeks before when there would be an unlimited transfer period, and now that we don't know so close to the international break, then I wouldn't really count on it and make my transfers based on that.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, we might have to deal with the 5 per week until told otherwise. So yeah, absolutely, planning is essential. A few other questions that were asked before the show from FBL Elijah. Sabitzer and Dortmund players have been slow off the mark. Keep this week for an easy fixture or sell. I mean, you have to look at the fixture being presented to them, despite how impressive Heidenheim were last week for, well, almost 80 minutes. You still fancy Dortmund to kickstart their season properly. So I think I'll certainly be keeping 1 or 2 of mine. What about yourself, Rune?
Yeah, I don't actually have any Dortmund midfielders at the moment, but I think I want one. And yeah, if I did have one, I would probably keep him. I think Sabitzer has been really disappointing so far. I expected much more from him both defensively and offensively. Actually, he and fantasy wise, he hasn't been doing very good. But if you already own him, then it might be worth a keep. Or you could upgrade him to Julian Brandt, who I think is on sale this week. Feel pretty confident about Brandt doing well. So he's probably the most safe pick in midfield.
Yeah, I think Brandt could be one of those ones this week where he really thrives and hopefully starts to hit the ground running like his form of last season. I think the second question from FBL Gunnosaurus was in relation to I'm set on Hoffman, Wirtz and Frimpong for this match day with room for one more Leverkusen asset. Do I go and get Boniface or Grimaldo, and why? So obviously we've already had Grimaldo from the defender's point of view, and well, without spoiling it and moving on to strikers, Rune, I think you may well also be tipping certain Mr. Boniface as well. So if you had room for one more, who would you side with, Boniface or Grimaldo?
Definitely Boniface. I can't underline enough how good an option I think he is for this week. He just kept taking shots at goal against Gladbach. He's the sort of striker who only has eye for goal, and that's the kind of player you want fantasy wise. He also backed the brace, of course, and has a really good matchup this week. So would definitely get Boniface in.
Yeah, absolutely right. I think that's again the majority of the midfield questions. So we will move on to strikers to move the show on, which you can now see at the bottom of your screen, and then we'll work through all and any questions, striker related and otherwise, to finish off. So Rune, back over to yourself.
Yeah, budget pick this week is Sven Michel, who scored against Gladbach in the opener from the penalty spot, which suggests that he will be on penalties for Augsburg going forward too, and that's always a plus, of course. And as I said earlier, Augsburg have a pretty good fixture against Bochum at home, and I think Mitchell's price is quite low. It's difficult finding good budget options up front this year, I feel, and Mitchell represents a lot of value at 5.3 million.
Yeah.
And yeah, my mid-price pick, a bit expensive one this week, but that's Boniface, who I feel, as I said, has made an immediate impact since joining over the summer. I think he's looked very impressive up front. Very physical striker, but also good at holding on to the ball and passing it on to his teammates. And it's really obvious, I think, that he's the focal point of Leverkusen's attack. Many of their attacks are all about getting him in a good position, and Hoffman and Wirtz and Frimpong and Grimaldo trying to pick out the right pass to Boniface up front. I think he had 11 shots against Gladbach, so that says something about his hunger for goals. And then finally, my premium pick is Daniel Marlin, who I think has been the most in form Dortmund attacking option from Dortmund. He scored in both their games, so I think he's the safe option there. Unfortunately, I went with Haller myself instead of Marlon from the start of the season, and Marlon has obviously outscored Haller in both 2 games so far. So if you want a Dortmund asset up front, then I think Marlon is the guy to go with at this point.
Yeah, 100%. He's been one of the few bright sparks for BVB so far this season, and so he could help himself this evening, which we're all looking forward to. Right then, so questions, comments, anything in relation to strikers onwards. Just making sure I go back far enough. One in from Jeff. Brandt, Wirtz, or Hoffman as my star option. Probably can't go wrong with any of them, but who would you be starring this week? I mean, for me, I'd be tempted to go with Hoffman, but what about yourself, Rune?
Yeah, I think most people it's a bit difficult. Depends on how much you want to gamble to, but it's actually quite nice to have a week where you can differentiate yourself from the others by picking someone they don't, and obviously there are several good options to start midfield this week. Personally, I think most people will go with Florian Wirtz or Jonas Hoffmann, given Leverkusen's amazing form and their great matchup too. So I think that makes a lot of sense to go with one of the Leverkusen options. As of now, Wirtz has a much higher ownership than Hoffmann, so Wirtz is probably the guy that most people will choose. That's what I expect at least. And then Hoffmann is a great alternative if you want to go with someone else. And then finally, Julian Brandt is another alternative. I think some people will be scared off by Dortmund's poor form. Personally, that's how I feel too. But a very good option if you want to go with someone else. And if Brandt does well and does better than the other two, then good for you if you chose him. But I just feel so certain about Leverkusen delivering this week that I would go with one of them.
Yeah, 100%. And then, I'll come back to Sophia's question, but this is a really interesting one, I think, from Jeff again. So thank you, Jeff. Would you play Mitchell in a 3-man attack, or would you feel budget plays are best kept in reserve? So obviously referring to the new rules that we have this season and kind of making the most of the kind of automation off the bench, Rune. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, in principle, I think I would play him, but I just think there are so many other good options this week. And the way I've played so far with the new rules is an expensive 3-man attack. I think Michel is pretty good for a 4-4-2 to keep on your bench. That's probably what I would do if I invested in him, and then I would spend some of the money in midfield. But I feel he has a great fixture, but Augsburg are not as big favorites as Leverkusen, Dortmund, and Bayern, of course. And that's the 3 teams I want to target up front, because after all, the strikers are the ones delivering the most goals. So that's where you can really get a lot of points. So if you choose Mitchell up there, then it also means you choose not to pick someone else from one of the bigger teams that are more certain to invest in.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, good question from Sophia as well, which I think you've fallen foul of as well, Rune. So is it best to sell Haller, even though he has a decent fixture, hasn't done much too far? And of course, Dortmund have just signed Niklas Füllkrug. Interesting question, Sophia. I got rid of Haller after week 1 myself. So Rune, what are you inclined to
do? If you have Haller now, then I would keep him for Heidenheim at home. Also because you can see if he starts, and he probably will, because after all, Füllkrug only joined yesterday. So I'd recommend giving him one last chance to see how he does. And then after the international break, Dortmund have some more difficult games as far as I remember. So then you can consider whether to offload him there or keep him. But I think it makes a lot of sense to stick with him if he's in the lineup tonight, and I assume that he will be.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Captain Rex again saying that we know that we recommended Boniface already, but should I be considering keeping Haller? So we've covered that one for you now. George's coming again. I'm trading Haller for Bonucci next week. Crikey! Well, that's an interesting one. Bonucci. What's he going to do up front? Well, obviously only joking. Captain Rex giving us a bit of a choice, a bit of a Sophie's choice. Start, bench, sell, or Openda, Haller, Behrens. Rune, this is a tricky one. If you got all three, that's tricky.
Yeah, I would start Haller simply because of the matchup at home against Heidenheim, and then I would probably bench Openda and sell Behrens because back Leipzig a bit more to get a result there, and I think Openda is more likely to have a good game than Behrens after all. But difficult one. Yeah,
absolutely. Behrens is obviously saving himself for the Bernabeu and Union's big Champions League games to come, which obviously is a very exciting draw for the Berlin side. We're really looking forward to watching those games. And then, just to finish things off, as we've still got 1 or 2 minutes, just double check that I haven't missed anything that has been, again, asked before the show went live. There was definitely one in relation to strikers. I wanted to get to it. From Bully Ugo on Twitter has asked, what do you think about this? I already have some Frimpong. I'm now thinking about these options. So one being Openda to Boniface and Czerny to Hoffman, or Behrens to Boniface and Czerny to some other midfielder, budget of 11.3. So a lot to take in there, Rune. But basically, Bully Hugo is considering upgrading either Openda or Behrens to Boniface, which, either way around, I think going to Boniface is a good option. Then, moving on from Czerny to either Hoffman, which again, I think is a very solid option, or another midfielder. So what are your thoughts on that? Maybe option one, so going from... Well, actually, I guess, option one is moving Openda for Boniface and Czerny for Hoffman, which obviously is banking on Leverkusen options, isn't it?
Yeah, sounds good to me. Something that I might do myself, actually. So, sounds very wise.
Yeah. One in from Jeff as well in the live chat. Let's see what this one is from Jeff. Is it excusable to not add the new Borussia Mönchengladbach goalkeeper? I might be drawn to him or Hoffman as a fifth transfer. Obviously, Gladbach bringing in a new keeper for Omlin, who has undergone shoulder surgery, I think it was, which he injured during training. So he's out. Rune, would you be bringing in the new goalkeeper, who I think his name was mentioned last night when we were doing the predictions for the life of me? I can't remember who it is. Obviously, against Bayern, who he's likely to be very busy against.
I think it's excusable not to add him. It's Moritz Nicolas, his name. Also, as Captain Rex is writing in the chat, Sewane actually wouldn't confirm that Nicolas will play, but I think he will, given the fact that he's been on the bench for all of the games this season so far. But I'd rather get Hoffman in this week and then think about getting Nicolas after the international break, maybe, because it's not like I would expect him to do very well against Bayern when you've not played in the Bundesliga before, and your first game is against Bayern, and you're playing for a team who just conceded 3 goals against Leverkusen. Then it could be a tough one. So yeah, I don't think it's essential to get him in.
Yeah. Very last one from Puis, who was asked on Twitter, who I think is also a regular and is often joining us in the live chat. So I hope you're doing well. Should I get a trio of Kane, Openda, and Boniface? I mean, sounds good to me. Sounds like a deadly front three, points to be gained everywhere. And yeah, obviously Rune and I have already kind of covered those options. Openda, obviously going to be one of those who are considered with a strong fixture against Union away from home, particularly so as well. But the way that the young man has started in the Bundesliga, who says that he should not carry on said form with RB Leipzig. So I think that's us covered. I do apologise if I've missed anything asked before the show, but I think we've got to all of them. From strikers, midfielders to defenders. So thank you to everyone that has who wasn't able to join but asked questions beforehand and will watch subsequently. Thank you to everyone that's tuned in this morning with our change of time, and hopefully you can all get used to it and join us for a Friday morning to kickstart what is hopefully going to be a lovely weekend of Bundesliga football. So yeah, thank you everyone again. Make sure you do smash a like on the video. Obviously, comment if you've missed anything and want to ask questions subsequently. Myself and Rune will try and pick them up before the Friday night fixture kicks off this evening. And of course, subscribe to the channel. Press that red button to make sure you don't miss out on what we're basically doing is 3 Bundesliga shows a week now with our bonus prediction show that went live last night. So check out mine and Mark's thoughts. And yeah, thank you to everyone. Have a great weekend. Rune, thank you very much, as per usual, and we'll see you all next week.